Sometimes one wrong text message is all it takes to change an entire life. At 2:13 in the morning, Claire Bennett sat on the edge of a worn-out couch in her tiny apartment on the south side of Milwaukee, holding her son's inhaler and shaking hands while freezing rain tapped against the window like impatient fingers. The apartment smelled faintly like instant noodles and children's cough medicine, and the old heater near the kitchen made a grinding noise every few minutes like it was about to give up completely. 8-year-old Ethan lay curled beneath a faded dinosaur blanket, breathing unevenly as his twin sister Ava slept beside him with one small arm wrapped protectively across his chest. Claire checked Ethan's forehead again and swallowed hard. His fever was climbing. She glanced at the clock on the microwave and felt tears burning behind her eyes. She had already missed 2 shifts this week at the assisted living center because both kids had gotten sick, and her manager had made it painfully clear that one more absence could cost her the job. The rent was already 10 days late. Her checking account had less than $11 left. And now the old Honda parked outside refused to start in the cold. Claire pressed her lips together and reached for her phone, scrolling desperately through old contacts until she found the number of a former coworker named Megan, the only person she thought might still be awake. Her fingers moved quickly across the cracked screen. "Please answer. I don't know what to do anymore. Ethan can barely breathe and I think I'm falling apart." She attached a photo without thinking, a picture of the twins asleep together under the blanket earlier that night, then hit send. For a few seconds nothing happened. Claire closed her eyes and leaned back against the couch, exhausted beyond words. Then her phone buzzed almost immediately. She frowned. Megan never answered that fast. A message appeared on the screen. "Where are the twins?" Claire blinked in confusion. Her stomach tightened. She stared at the number and realized instantly that she had sent the text to the wrong contact. Before she could respond, another message appeared. "Answer me now." Her pulse quickened. The typing bubble appeared again almost instantly, as if whoever was on the other end had been waiting years for this moment. "Are they both 8 years old?" Claire sat upright. A cold wave rushed through her body that had nothing to do with the weather outside. She typed carefully. "I think you have the wrong person." 3 dots appeared again, then vanished, then appeared once more. Finally, a single message came through. "No, I don't think I do." Nearly 900 miles away, aboard a private jet flying over the Atlantic, billionaire investor Adrian Cole stared at the photo glowing on his phone with a look his assistant had never seen before. The powerful businessman who had negotiated billion-dollar mergers without blinking suddenly looked pale, silent, almost afraid. His eyes locked on the little girl in the picture, the girl with the same gray-blue eyes as his mother. Adrian slowly lowered the phone into his lap while the engine hummed around him. Then he spoke 4 words that changed everything. "Prepare the car. Tonight." Claire stared at the strange messages on her phone while the sound of Ethan coughing filled the apartment again. Her chest tightened as she quickly locked the screen and looked toward the twins, hoping they were still asleep. The last thing she needed was some kind of late-night scam or prank. She rubbed her tired eyes and typed carefully. "I think you have the wrong number. Please stop texting me." The response came almost instantly. "What hospital was Ethan born in?" Claire froze. The room suddenly felt colder than before. She had never mentioned a hospital. She had not even mentioned Ethan's name in the photo caption. Her fingers trembled above the screen as she read the message again and again. Another text arrived before she could answer. "Please, I need to know if the twins are safe." Claire stood up from the couch and walked toward the kitchen, lowering her voice even though nobody else was awake. "Who is this?" she typed. This time there was a longer pause, long enough for Claire to hear the old refrigerator humming in the silence. Then finally a name appeared on her screen. Adrian Cole. Claire frowned immediately. Even exhausted and half asleep, she recognized the name. Everybody did. Adrian Cole was one of the wealthiest investors in the country, the kind of billionaire whose face appeared on business magazines and grocery store checkout lines. Private jets, luxury hotels, billion-dollar deals. Men like him did not text strangers in the middle of the night asking questions about children. Claire almost laughed at how ridiculous the situation felt. "This is not funny," she replied. "I do not know you." Thousands of feet above the ocean, Adrian continued staring at the photo on his phone while his assistant Daniel sat quietly across from him, too nervous to speak. Adrian had spent years controlling every room he entered, every negotiation, every risk. But now his composure was slipping apart one crack at a time. His thumb slowly zoomed in on the picture again. The boy had Claire's smile. The girl had those eyes. Those impossible gray-blue eyes that belonged to the Cole family and almost nobody else. Adrian swallowed hard. 8 years. 8 years of wondering if he had imagined her. 8 years of unanswered questions after that night in Chicago disappeared into tragedy and confusion. He still remembered Claire standing outside the small coffee shop in the snow, laughing while holding 2 paper cups in her hands. He remembered promising to call her after his meeting the next morning. But the accident changed everything. By the time he recovered months later, she was gone. No number. No address. Nothing. He had searched for her longer than anyone knew. And now somehow, in the middle of the night, she had appeared on his phone like a ghost from another life. Daniel carefully cleared his throat. "Sir, we land in New York in 35 minutes. Adrian did not look away from the screen. "Cancel tomorrow morning's meetings." Daniel blinked in surprise. All of them. Every single one. Back in Milwaukee, Claire tucked another blanket around Ethan as his breathing slowly steadied. She checked the clock again and tried convincing herself this was just a bizarre misunderstanding. Then her phone buzzed once more. A new message appeared. Claire did. "You ever tell the twins about me?" Her heart nearly stopped. Nobody outside her old life in Chicago knew that name connected to her. Nobody. Claire slowly sat down beside her children, staring at the glowing screen while rain slid down the apartment windows. Then another message arrived. "I am coming to see you tonight." Claire barely slept after Adrian's final message. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind replayed the same impossible question. How did he know her name? By 6:30 in the morning, the freezing rain had turned into wet snow that covered the cracked sidewalks outside her apartment building. The twins were finally awake, sitting together at the tiny kitchen table while Claire made oatmeal with the last packet she could find in the cabinet. Ethan looked pale, but his breathing had improved enough to ease some of the fear twisting inside her chest. Ava swung her legs beneath the chair and watched her mother carefully. "Mom," she said softly, "why do you keep looking out the window?" Claire forced a tired smile. "I am just checking the weather, sweetheart." But that was not true. Every few minutes she found herself pulling the curtain aside, half convinced she would see nothing and realize the entire night had been some strange dream caused by exhaustion. At exactly 7:14 in the morning, a long black limousine slowly turned onto the street outside the apartment building. Claire froze so suddenly she nearly dropped the spoon in her hand. The car looked absurd in the middle of the worn-down neighborhood, gleaming beneath the gray winter sky while neighbors immediately peeked through windows and cracked open apartment doors to stare. Ava's eyes widened. "Mom, is that for us?" Claire's stomach tightened painfully. "Stay here," she whispered. A second black vehicle parked behind the limousine. Then a tall man in a dark coat stepped out onto the sidewalk. Even from the third-floor window, Claire recognized him instantly. Adrian Cole looked older than she remembered, broader in the shoulders, sharper around the eyes, but unmistakably the same man she had once laughed with during a snowstorm in Chicago nearly 9 years earlier. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment neither of them moved. Adrian stood beside the car looking up toward her apartment window as snowflakes drifted across the morning air. Then Ethan appeared beside Claire and peeked outside. Adrian's expression changed immediately. Something vulnerable cracked through the cold, controlled billionaire image the world knew so well. Claire stepped back from the window fast enough to scare both children. "Okay," she said quickly, trying to sound calm. "You two stay inside and lock the door. Do not open it for anybody." Ava frowned. "Who is that?" Claire grabbed her coat with trembling hands. "Someone from a long time ago." The hallway outside smelled faintly like cigarette smoke and old carpet cleaner as Claire hurried downstairs. Her heartbeat pounded louder with every step. By the time she reached the front entrance, Adrian was already standing there waiting. Up close, he looked exhausted, as if he had not slept at all. Snow rested lightly on the shoulders of his expensive black coat. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Claire crossed her arms tightly. "You should not be here." Adrian looked at her carefully, almost like he was trying to convince himself she was real. I searched for you for years. Claire shook her head immediately. No. You disappeared. A shadow passed across his face. Claire, there are things you do not know. She let out a quiet, nervous laugh. You flew across the country because of one text message? Adrian glanced upward toward the apartment window where the twins had started peeking through the curtain. The moment he saw Ava beside Ethan, all the color seemed to drain from his face again. His voice lowered almost to a whisper. One of them has my mother's eyes. Claire felt a chill run through her body. Then Adrian looked directly at her and said the words that made her pulse stop completely. We need to talk about the twins. Claire stared at Adrian as cold wind drifted through the apartment entrance behind her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The last time she had seen him was almost 9 years ago outside a hospital in downtown Chicago. Back when neither of them knew how quickly life could fall apart. Adrian took a slow breath, his eyes never leaving her face. Please, he said quietly. Just give me 5 minutes. Claire almost laughed at the absurdity of hearing a billionaire ask for 5 minutes in the middle of her apartment building lobby, while neighbors openly watched from the stairwell. You do not get to walk back into my life like this, she whispered. Adrian nodded once, as if he had expected the anger. You are right. That answer caught her off guard. She crossed her arms tighter against the cold. Then why are you here? Adrian glanced toward the staircase leading up to her apartment. Because I saw that photo. Claire's pulse quickened again. It was sent by mistake. Maybe, Adrian replied softly. But I do not think it was an accident. Claire looked away immediately. She hated that his voice still affected her after all these years. Hated that one look at him had pulled memories she spent years trying to bury back to the surface. Chicago. Winter lights reflecting on wet streets. Cheap coffee at 2 in the morning. Adrian before the money and magazine covers. Before the private jets and billion-dollar headlines. Back then he had only been a young investor trying desperately to prove himself. Claire remembered how easy it had been to talk to him. How safe she had felt during those few short weeks together. Until everything suddenly ended. Adrian's expression darkened slightly. After the accident, my father moved me to a recovery facility in Switzerland. I was there for months. Claire frowned despite herself. Accident. Adrian looked surprised. You never knew? She shook her head slowly. I waited for you for weeks, Adrian. Then somebody from your office called and said you did not want any further contact. His face went completely still. What? Claire swallowed hard as painful memories flooded back. A woman called me from your company. She said you were engaged and that whatever happened between us was a mistake. Adrian stared at her in disbelief. I was never engaged. Silence settled heavily between them. Snow continued falling outside while somewhere upstairs, a baby cried faintly in another apartment. Claire suddenly felt unsteady. I thought you chose your career over me, she admitted quietly. Adrian ran a hand across his face like he was trying to process everything at once. Claire, I spent years trying to find you after I recovered. Her eyes widened slightly. What? Your number was disconnected. Your apartment was empty. Nobody knew where you went. Claire looked down at the floor. I moved to Milwaukee after I found out I was pregnant. Adrian's breath caught. The word hung between them like something fragile and dangerous. Pregnant. He looked toward the stairs again, toward the twins upstairs. Then back at Claire. Why did you never tell me? Tears burned in her eyes instantly. Because I thought you abandoned me. Adrian closed his eyes for a brief second, pain flashing across his face before disappearing behind control again. When he opened them, his voice sounded quieter than before. Claire. How old are Ethan and Ava exactly? Claire hesitated. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it. Finally she answered in almost a whisper. They turn 9 next month. Adrian slowly exhaled, and for the first time since arriving, he looked shaken. Truly shaken. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. I need to ask you something, he said carefully. And depending on your answer, everything may change. Claire followed Adrian outside because she did not want the twins overhearing another word of the conversation. The freezing morning air hit her cheeks immediately as they stepped onto the sidewalk beside the limousine. A few neighbors pretended to check their mail while openly staring at the expensive cars parked outside the building. Adrian ignored all of them. His attention stayed fixed entirely on Claire. "What is the question?" she asked quietly. Adrian hesitated for the first time since arriving. For a man known for confidence and control, he suddenly looked uncertain. "Did you ever have a DNA test done?" Claire frowned. "What? On the twins?" Her expression hardened instantly. "No," Adrian nodded slowly as if he already expected the answer. "Claire, I need you to understand something. I am not here to take anything away from you." She crossed her arms tightly. "Then why does this feel like an interrogation?" Adrian looked down for a moment before answering. "Because if those children are mine, I already lost almost 9 years with them." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard again. Claire hated that part most of all. She wanted to be angry. It would have been easier if he acted cold or arrogant like the men she saw on television. Instead, Adrian looked devastated. Snowflakes melted against the dark fabric of his coat while he spoke carefully. "I know this is overwhelming, but I cannot walk away without knowing the truth." Claire looked toward the apartment window upstairs where 2 small silhouettes still peeked through the curtain. Ethan and Ava had no idea their entire world might be changing downstairs in the snow. "You think they are yours," she whispered. Adrian met her eyes directly. "I think something happened to keep us apart." Before Claire could respond, Adrian's phone rang sharply. He glanced at the screen, irritation flashing across his face. "Not now," he muttered before declining the call. Seconds later it rang again. This time he answered. "What?" His expression darkened immediately as he listened. Claire watched confusion slowly turn into anger behind his calm exterior. "Who authorized that?" he asked coldly. Silence followed. Then Adrian looked away toward the street. "Send me the file now." He hung up and stared at his phone for several seconds without speaking. Claire shifted uneasily. "What happened?" Adrian slowly looked back at her. "My assistant just found records from my father's private office." Claire frowned. "What kind of records?" Adrian swallowed hard. "Surveillance reports." Her stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" He unlocked his phone and held the screen toward her. Claire's breath caught instantly. On the screen was an old photograph of her leaving work in Chicago nearly 9 years earlier. Another photo showed her entering her apartment building. Another showed her sitting alone inside a coffee shop. The dates beneath the images were all from the weeks after Adrian's accident. Claire stared at the screen in horror. "Why would your father have these?" Adrian's jaw tightened visibly. "Because apparently he knew about you." Claire looked at him in disbelief. "No, yes." Adrian's voice lowered dangerously. "And if these files are real, then somebody in my family made sure we never saw each other again." Claire suddenly felt dizzy. Everything she believed for almost a decade was beginning to crack apart piece by piece. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Claire, I need proof now more than ever." She looked up at him carefully. "Proof of what?" Adrian's eyes flickered toward the apartment window again where Ava stood beside Ethan behind the curtain. Then he said quietly, "That I am their father." Claire did not answer immediately. Snow continued falling around them while distant traffic echoed through the freezing Milwaukee morning. She looked at Adrian carefully, searching his face for any sign that this was some cruel misunderstanding she could still escape from. But the emotion in his eyes felt painfully real. "I spent 8 years protecting those children by myself," she said quietly. "You cannot just appear one morning and ask for proof like this is some business negotiation." Adrian nodded slowly. "You are right." His voice softened. "But if they are mine, Claire, then they deserve to know I never abandoned them." The words hit her harder than she expected. For years she had told herself she no longer cared why he disappeared. She built a life around survival. Double shifts. Cheap groceries. Parent-teacher conferences alone. Quiet birthdays where she stretched every dollar to make sure Ethan and Ava still felt special. But hearing Adrian say he never chose to leave reopened something inside her she thought had healed long ago. Upstairs, the apartment door suddenly opened. Claire turned quickly as Ava leaned over the railing in the hallway wearing oversized pink socks and clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mom," she called softly. "Ethan is coughing again." Claire immediately rushed back toward the building entrance. Adrian followed a few steps behind before stopping himself. He watched silently as Claire disappeared upstairs. A few moments later, he made a decision that surprised even him. He removed his coat, handed it to his driver, and walked into the old apartment building without another word. The third-floor hallway smelled faintly like laundry detergent and old paint. When Adrian reached the apartment door, he hesitated briefly before knocking softly. Claire opened it almost immediately, looking startled to see him there. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Adrian glanced toward the couch where Ethan sat wrapped in blankets. "You said he was sick." Claire looked exhausted. Truly exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that sleep alone could never fix. After a long pause, she stepped aside silently and let him enter. Adrian moved slowly inside the tiny apartment, taking in every detail. The old furniture. The children's drawings taped to the refrigerator. The stack of overdue bills partly hidden beneath a cookbook on the counter. None of it matched the glamorous stories people imagined about the mothers of billionaire children. Ethan looked up nervously from the couch. "Who is that?" Claire opened her mouth to answer, but Adrian spoke first. "My name is Adrian." Ava climbed beside her brother and studied him carefully. "You have snow in your hair," she announced innocently. For the first time all morning, Adrian smiled slightly. "I noticed that too." Claire watched the interaction carefully, unsure what unsettled her more. How natural it felt or how badly she wanted to stop it before somebody got hurt. Ethan coughed again, reaching for his inhaler. Without thinking, Adrian immediately picked up the glass of water nearby and handed it to him. Ethan blinked in surprise before quietly taking it. "Thanks." Adrian sat slowly in the old armchair across from the couch, his expression unreadable as he watched the twins whisper to each other. Then Ava tilted her head slightly. "Mom," she asked softly, "why does he look at us like he knows us?" The room fell completely silent. Claire's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Adrian looked down briefly before meeting Ava's eyes again. His voice came out lower than before, almost emotional despite how hard he tried controlling it. "Because sometimes," he said carefully, "you meet people who feel familiar before you even understand why." Ethan studied him quietly for several seconds. Then the little boy asked the question Claire feared most. "Did you know our dad?" The question hung in the apartment like something fragile enough to break all four of them at once. Claire immediately looked away while Ethan waited patiently on the couch, his small hands wrapped around the glass of water Adrian had given him moments earlier. Ava sat cross-legged beside her brother, clutching the stuffed rabbit tighter against her chest. Adrian remained still in the old armchair, but inside, everything felt unsteady. 4 years he had stood in front of investors, reporters, and politicians without fear. Yet one little boy asking about his father nearly took the air from his lungs. Claire stepped forward quickly. "Ethan, sweetheart, maybe we should let Mr. Cole leave now." But Ethan kept watching Adrian. "Did you know him?" he repeated softly. Adrian glanced at Claire, silently asking permission. She looked torn apart by uncertainty. Finally, after a long painful pause, she nodded once. Adrian turned back toward the twins carefully. "Yes," he answered honestly. "I knew him a long time ago." Ethan looked down at the blanket in his lap. "Mom says he is gone." Claire closed her eyes briefly. She had always tried to answer their questions gently without filling their childhood with bitterness. Adrian swallowed hard before speaking again. Sometimes adults lose each other even when they do not want to. Ava studied him quietly with those same gray-blue eyes that continued unsettling him every time she looked his way. "Did he know about us?" she asked. The room went silent again. Claire's heart pounded so loudly she thought they might hear it. Adrian lowered his gaze for a moment before answering carefully. "No," he admitted softly. "I do not think he did." Ethan looked disappointed in a way that hurt far more than anger would have. "Oh." Adrian felt something twist painfully in his chest. He had missed birthdays, Christmas mornings, first days of school, bedtime stories, entire years he could never get back. And the worst part was knowing somebody may have stolen all of it from him on purpose. Before anyone could speak again, Claire's phone suddenly buzzed loudly on the kitchen counter. She grabbed it quickly and frowned at the screen. Her manager from the assisted living center. She answered immediately. Hello. The sharp voice on the other end was loud enough for Adrian to hear pieces of it from across the room. You missed another shift yesterday, Claire. I cannot keep covering for you. Claire's face drained of color. I understand, but my son was sick and my car would not start. I am sorry, but we need reliable people. Claire closed her eyes. Please. I really need this job. A long silence followed. Then the call ended. Claire slowly lowered the phone, staring at the dark screen. Adrian already understood. They fired you, he said quietly. Claire forced herself to nod once. It is fine. But her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Ava immediately climbed off the couch and hugged her mother around the waist. Ethan looked worried. Are we okay? Claire quickly knelt beside them, pushing her emotions down the way she always did. Of course we are okay. Adrian watched her carefully. Even now, after everything, she protected the twins before herself. The apartment suddenly felt much smaller than before. Too cold. Too fragile. Adrian stood slowly from the armchair and reached into the inside pocket of his coat. Claire immediately stiffened. What are you doing? He pulled out a business card and placed it gently on the kitchen counter beside the overdue bills. I want to help. Claire shook her head immediately. No, Claire. I do not need charity. Adrian looked directly at her. This is not charity. His voice softened. This is me trying to take responsibility for something I should have known years ago. Claire opened her mouth to respond, but another knock suddenly echoed through the apartment door. All four of them froze. Adrian frowned slightly. Are you expecting someone? Claire slowly shook her head. Then a familiar female voice came from the hallway outside. Claire Bennett? There is a certified delivery for you. Claire slowly walked toward the apartment door while her pulse pounded harder with every step. Something about the timing felt wrong. Adrian remained standing near the kitchen counter, his expression instantly guarded again, the calm billionaire composure returning piece by piece. Ava quietly moved closer to Ethan on the couch as if she sensed the tension spreading through the room. Claire opened the door carefully and found a middle-aged delivery woman holding a large certified envelope. Claire Bennett, the woman asked politely. Claire nodded. Please sign here. Claire quickly scribbled her name while cold air drifted in from the hallway. The woman handed over the envelope and left without another word. The moment Claire closed the door, she noticed the return address printed in the corner. Her stomach dropped instantly. What is it? Adrian asked. Claire stared at the envelope in disbelief before finally answering. The property management company. She slowly opened it with trembling fingers while Ethan and Ava watched silently from the couch. The room became so quiet that even the old heater clicking in the corner sounded loud. Claire unfolded the paper and read the first few lines. Her face lost all color. Adrian stepped forward immediately. Claire. She lowered the notice slowly. They are evicting us. Ava looked confused. What does that mean? Claire forced herself to smile even though her eyes were already filling with tears. Nothing you need to worry about. But Ethan was old enough to understand more than she wanted. Are we losing the apartment? Claire could not answer right away. Adrian carefully took the paper from her shaking hands and scanned the notice quickly. Past due rent. Final warning. Vacate within 14 days. His jaw tightened. How long has this been happening? Claire wiped at her eyes immediately, embarrassed to cry in front of him. It does not matter. Claire. I said it does not matter. The frustration in her voice surprised even herself. Years of stress and exhaustion were finally breaking through the careful control she forced herself to maintain every day. I have handled everything alone for nearly 9 years, she whispered. I do not even know how to let somebody help me anymore. Adrian looked at her for several long seconds, before quietly folding the notice in half. You should never have had to do this alone. Claire laughed softly through tears. But I did. Ethan slowly climbed off the couch and walked toward his mother. Mom, he asked carefully, are we going to move again? Claire immediately knelt beside him and brushed his hair back gently. I will figure it out, okay? I always do. Adrian watched the interaction silently, but inside, guilt crashed into him harder than ever before. He thought about every luxury penthouse he owned, Every empty guest room sitting untouched in houses too large for one person, while Claire and the twins worried about losing heat in the middle of winter. Ava suddenly looked toward Adrian. Can rich people stop apartments from taking families away? Claire closed her eyes briefly, mortified by the question. But Adrian did not smile or dismiss it. Instead, he answered seriously. Sometimes they can help. Ava nodded thoughtfully, like that answer made perfect sense to her. Adrian turned back toward Claire. Come with me. She looked up instantly. What? Just for a few days until we figure this out. Claire stood immediately. No, Claire, the twins need stability right now. And what happens when reporters find out? Or your business partners? Or whoever has been spying on me for years? Adrian stepped closer carefully. Then I will deal with them. His voice stayed calm, but something protective had entered it now. Something stronger than before. Claire looked at him uncertainly, torn between fear and exhaustion. Before she could answer, Adrian's phone suddenly buzzed again. He checked the screen and his expression darkened immediately. Claire noticed it at once. What happened? Adrian slowly lowered the phone. Somebody leaked a photo of my car outside this building. Claire stared at Adrian while the tension inside the apartment thickened by the second. What kind of photo? She asked quietly. Adrian looked at the screen again before answering. Somebody posted pictures online of my limousine outside this building about 10 minutes ago. Claire felt panic rise immediately. Online where? Everywhere. Adrian rubbed a hand across his face, clearly frustrated. Business blogs. Celebrity accounts. People are already speculating. Ethan frowned from the couch. What does speculating mean? Claire forced herself to stay calm for the twins even though her mind was racing. Adrian locked his phone and looked directly at her. It means the media is going to start asking questions very soon. Ava hugged her stuffed rabbit tighter. Are we in trouble? Adrian immediately shook his head. No. Nobody is in trouble. But Claire could already see the headlines forming in her mind. Billionaire spotted at apartment of secret family. Hidden children. Mystery woman. Her stomach twisted painfully. This was exactly the kind of world she never wanted near Ethan and Ava. Adrian stepped closer carefully. Claire, listen to me. You and the twins cannot stay here right now. Why? She whispered. Because if reporters find this address before we understand who leaked the photo, there will be cameras outside this building by tonight. Claire looked toward the window instinctively, suddenly imagining strangers photographing her children through the curtains. Ethan noticed the fear in her face immediately. Mom! Adrian softened his voice. I know you do not trust me yet. You have every reason not to. But I can protect them. The word protect lingered heavily in the room. Claire had spent years protecting the twins alone. Letting somebody else step into that role felt terrifying. But looking at Ethan's pale face and Ava's worried eyes, she knew they could not survive another crisis on their own. Adrian's phone buzzed again. This time he answered immediately. Daniel. His expression darkened after only a few seconds. Who authorized reporters to contact my office? He listened silently, then glanced toward Claire. No interviews. No statements. Shut everything down until I say otherwise. He ended the call sharply. Claire folded her arms tightly. This is already becoming a disaster. Adrian looked at her carefully. No. This is becoming public. The honesty in his voice surprised her again. He was not pretending things would magically stay simple. For the first time all morning, Claire saw genuine fear in his eyes too. Not fear for his reputation. Fear for them. Ethan suddenly looked between the two adults. Are you fighting? Adrian immediately answered softly. No. Ava tilted her head thoughtfully. You look at Mom the same way she looks at old pictures when she thinks we are asleep. Claire's cheeks flushed instantly. Adrian blinked in surprise while Ava continued innocently. Like you missed something. Silence filled the apartment again. Claire looked away first. Adrian's voice lowered almost to a whisper. I did miss something. He looked directly at the twins now. I missed a lot. Ethan studied him quietly for several seconds before asking the question nobody was prepared for. Are you our dad? Claire's breath caught instantly. The entire room seemed to stop moving. Adrian stared at the little boy, emotion finally breaking through the careful control he had maintained since arriving. He slowly knelt so he was eye level with both children. Then he answered with complete honesty. I think there is a very good chance that I am. Ava's eyes widened slightly. Ethan looked confused more than anything else. Claire felt tears filling her eyes before she could stop them. Adrian glanced back at her gently. I am not asking you to decide everything today, he said softly. But please let me help. Outside, snow continued falling across the city, while distant sirens echoed somewhere far beyond the apartment building. Claire looked at the twins, then at the eviction notice still sitting on the counter beside overdue bills, then finally back at Adrian Cole, the man she once loved before the world tore them apart. And for the first time in nearly 9 years, she quietly stopped carrying the weight alone.